There's something about being 30,000 feet in the air that makes it clear how low people can still treat you. He wasn't loud, didn't demand special treatment, didn't flash a watch or drop a name. He just sat down, quietly. Seat 2A. First class. Window seat. And that's when she walked up, smiling that tight, strained smile that never quite touches the eyes. "Sir, are you sure you're in the right seat?" No greeting, no check of the boarding pass, just assumption. He looked up, calm, composed. "Yeah, this is me." She paused, then leaned in slightly. "I'm going to need to see your ticket." He handed it over without a word. She glanced at it confused, double-checked. He wasn't wrong. But in her mind, he was, because black men in hoodies don't usually fly first class. Not alone. Not on this airline. Not without some kind of explanation. What she didn't know was that the man in 2A, Malik Dawson, didn't just buy the seat. He bought the entire company last year. He was the CEO of the parent firm that had just acquired the airline in a $1.2 billion merger. He didn't just belong in first class. He owned the plane. Before we fly any further, if stories like this matter to you, the ones that show how far we've come and how far we still have to go, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes the smallest moments carry the loudest truths. This isn't just a story about a billionaire. It's about how, even when you own the sky, some people still try to put you back in your place. It's about perception, about how dignity can look like silence, and how power doesn't always raise its voice, it just waits for you to finish assuming. This is the story of Malik Dawson, a man who rose from foster care and food stamps to Forbes and boardrooms, who never needed to prove himself until the world tried to shrink him back down. He didn't make a scene. He didn't demand the flight attendant apologize, but when the moment came, when everyone realized who he was, the silence in the cabin said more than words ever could. You can build empires in silence and still get asked if you belong in the room you paid for. It's 6:41 a.m. The boarding gate is crowded with sleepy travelers scrolling through phones, sipping burnt airport coffee, mumbling about delays. And yet, somehow he still stands out. Not because he's famous. Not because of the way he dresses, hoodie, joggers, no labels in sight. But because he doesn't rush. Malik Dawson moves with that quiet kind of confidence that unnerves people. Like he knows something they don't. Like he's not in a hurry, because he owns the clock. He scans his boarding pass. Gate B27. C2A. The agent doesn't recognize him. She barely glances at the name. "Have a good flight, Mr. Dawson," she says, like muscle memory. He nods, smiles, steps onto the jet bridge. No one sees a billionaire here. And that's exactly how he likes it. He settles into first class. Window seat. Minimalist backpack. No entourage. He opens a slim moleskine notebook and starts sketching out an idea, something about decentralized mortgage underwriting. Just a thought. Something he might build next year. Or maybe not. Malik never planned on becoming the face of anything. But here he is, 34 years old. Founder of Credsure, a fintech platform now used by over 4.3 million Americans, mostly black, brown, working-class people trying to break cycles the system stacked against them. And now, quietly, strategically, he owns the majority stake in this airline. Not publicly, not for press, just because his mother 3 years ago was humiliated in front of a crowd for trying to board early. She had a cane that day. Her knee was swollen. They told her she had to wait until her zone was called. She didn't say anything, but Malik saw her eyes. He never forgot. Rewind, 2017. Oakland. Malik's apartment smells like black coffee and Ethernet cords. He's got one monitor balancing on a stack of library books, a secondhand couch with a laptop balanced on his knees, and $2,183 left in his checking account. His day job? Freelance coding. His night job? Building Credsure, a platform designed to help underbanked Americans build credit by paying rent and utilities on time. It starts as a tool for his cousin. Then it works. Then his neighbor wants in. Then a landlord association in Stockton reaches out. Then 12,000 users sign up in 2 months, and the system crashes. Malik rebuilds it from scratch in 3 days. He doesn't sleep, eats instant ramen. Then one night, while debugging a payment sync issue, he gets an email. Subject line, "Want to talk?" From James Burke, managing partner at a tech fund in Chicago. "You look young," James says on their first Zoom. Malik nods. "I'm not here to look old." James smiles. "You're not what most people expect." "I know." "What made you build this?" Malik leans back. He doesn't overperform. Doesn't pitch like the VCs expect. He just says, "Because when I was 10, my mom couldn't get a $500 loan to fix our car. So she lost her job. And we had cereal for dinner 3 weeks in a row. I'm tired of brilliant people getting punished for being poor." James wires the first $250,000 the next morning. Fast forward, 2020, pandemic, unemployment at historic highs. CredSure becomes a lifeline. People are using the app to track rent, utilities, and prove their financial responsibility. Malik rolls out a partnership with credit unions, then with local governments, then with Google, who wants to license his tech. He says, "No, I built this for us, not to be bought by people who never needed it." In 2021, CredSure goes public. He rings the bell at NASDAQ in a simple charcoal suit. No flash, no diamonds. He thanks his team, mentions his mother, and then disappears from headlines. He buys back time, peace, focus, but he's still black, still young, still wears hoodies. At conferences, people still hand him their trash, thinking he's event staff. On red-eye flights, attendants still double-check his seat. Like today, "Sir, are you sure you're in the right seat?" The flight attendant stands beside him now. She's polite, overly so. The kind of polite that's been used to deflect lawsuits. She looks uncomfortable. Malik doesn't react, just blinks once calmly. "I am," he says. She smiles tightly. "Can I see your boarding pass just to confirm?" He hands it to her. She looks, then looks again. "Of course," she says, tone shifting quickly. "Just a formality." She walks away, embarrassed, but not apologetic. Malik doesn't say a word. He just opens his notebook again, flips to a clean page, and writes a single line at the top. What happens when dignity isn't optional but automatic? Around him, people recline, sip champagne, scroll TikTok. No one knows who he is. They don't know this is his plane. That last quarter, his fund acquired the struggling airline's parent company. That he's here not for ego, but for audit. He's traveling to meet the customer support team in DC. He wants to know what kind of culture he's inherited. Because if it feels like this in first class, what does it feel like in row 32? This is Malik Dawson. Not a character. Not a caricature. Just a man who's been underestimated his whole life, and who never needed revenge to win. He just needed the right seat and the right story. Flight 176 is now cruising at 36,000 feet. It's quiet in the cabin, the kind of quiet that's both peaceful and performative. Noise-canceling headphones, glass clinks, the occasional ding from a seatbelt sign. Malik Dawson closes his notebook. The line he just wrote still hangs in his mind. What happens when dignity isn't optional but automatic? He looks out the window. Somewhere below, the country stretches in waves, tiny lights, winding rivers, invisible borders. He wonders how many people down there are being judged right now, just like he was, for how they look, what they wear, where they sit. The flight attendant hasn't returned since the boarding pass check. But someone else has. Row 1, seat 1C. A white man in a gray tailored suit leans across the aisle and says, "Just loud enough to carry. They're letting anyone into first class these days, huh?" A smirk, the kind that doesn't ask for a response because it assumes silence. Malik doesn't flinch. The man isn't talking to him. Not directly. He's saying it at him, to the woman next to him, to the air, to keep the social order in place. The woman chuckles politely, unsure. Malik closes his eyes. He's used to this. It's never just one comment. It's the collection of them. The tone, the glance, the checking again and again, the way you're reminded, you're lucky to be here. But luck had nothing to do with Malik's seat. He paid for it. He paid for the plane. And in some way, he paid for this moment with every system he ever had to outthink just to breathe. Then comes the coffee. The flight attendant, the same one from earlier, returns with a tray. She smiles at the man in 1C. "Mr. Gallagher, your black coffee." She places it gently in front of him, folded napkin beneath, sugar on the side. Then she turns to Malik. "Sorry, we're out of almond milk," she says. He blinks. He didn't ask for almond milk. Didn't order anything yet. "Oh," he says evenly. "I didn't order." She frowns, then looks at her tablet. "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought—" She trails off. It's not the mistake that stings. It's the pattern. Malik nods slightly. "No worries." She lingers a second too long, then walks away. The moment hits harder than it should, not because of what happened, but because of what always happens. Malik could speak up. He could tell her who he is, pull up the documents, show her the press, reveal that she's standing 3 feet away from her ultimate boss. But he doesn't, because if you have to prove your worth to be treated with respect, is it really respect? And then he hears it. Row 4, 2 rows behind. A quiet voice. They always think they're so special once they get money. Malik doesn't turn. He just listens. 2 flight attendants are talking near the galley, not realizing how sound travels in first class. One of them says, "I just think it's funny how some passengers act like we're supposed to bow down. Just sit in your seat and be grateful. It's probably rented status anyway." The other replies, "Laughter. Quiet, but sharp." Malik exhales. Not anger, just confirmation. This is why people stop trying. This is why brilliance gets dimmed. This is how power systems stay intact, one small dismissal at a time. And that's when the manager walks in. She's wearing navy blue with gold stripes on the shoulder. Erica Tran, onboard services manager. Late 30s, confident, sharp eyes. She approaches Malik. "Mr. Dawson?" she asks gently. He looks up, surprised. "Yes." She smiles, but there's tension in her voice. "I'd like to speak with you privately, just a moment in the galley." The other passengers glance. Something shifts. Malik stands, calmly, picks up his notebook. As he walks past 1C, the suited man raises an eyebrow. The woman next to him whispers, "Told you." Probably something shady. In the galley, Erica closes the curtain behind them. She leans in, more professional than warm. "I want to apologize," she begins. Malik's eyebrows raise slightly. "I overheard the comment from earlier about your seat, and I also reviewed your profile." He waits. She continues, "I just want to make it clear, your status here is fully verified. There's no issue with your reservation." "My status?" he asks softly. "Or my presence?" She blinks. "I'm sorry." Malik tilts his head, voice calm. "Are you verifying my seat or your staff's assumptions about me?" Erica pauses. Not defensive, thoughtful. Both, she admits. And that's the moment. Not confrontation. Not public spectacle. Just truth, quiet and razor sharp. Malik reaches into his pocket, pulls out a slim card. Black. No logos. He hands it to her. She flips it over. Sees the embossed name, Skyconnect Holdings. And beneath it, Malik A. Dawson, board executive/primary shareholder. She looks up stunned. "I didn't want to embarrass anyone," Malik says. "I just wanted to fly." Erica swallows. "I understand." "Good," he says, "because this isn't about me. It's about how many other people get treated like this when they don't own the airline." Silence. She nods slowly. "I'll speak to my team," she says. "No," Malik replies. "You'll train your team." And with that, he steps back into the cabin. He returns to seat 2A. The man in 1C watches. So does the flight attendant. No one says a word. But Malik? He opens his notebook again, flips the page, and starts writing the outline for a mandatory crew-wide training program. Title, "Bias Doesn't Wear a Uniform." Because he knows the truth. You can be a billionaire, A genius. A quiet builder of empires. But none of it matters if you're still treated like luck put you here, not merit. Real power doesn't come from forcing people to respect you. It comes from creating a world where they don't get to choose. 3 days later, Malik walks into the SkyConnect headquarters in D.C. Top floor, glass walls, fresh-cut succulents on the counter. Everything is polished, quiet, corporate, but the air feels off. Not hostile, just still, like the silence before storm. He can feel at the moment the elevator dings open. People nod politely but avoid eye contact. Someone whispers near the coffee machine. A door closes a little too quickly. Malik's been in rooms like this before. He knows what silence means. It means something has been shared, and not in his favor. In his office, his assistant Brianna waits. She's one of the few people who doesn't perform around him. Morning, she says, sliding him a folder and a latte. You're not gonna like this. He raises an eyebrow. More flight delays? She shakes her head. Someone leaked a transcript of your interaction on Flight 176. To who? Internal staff forum. It's already getting reactions. She pauses. Anonymous post, titled, The Owner Who Wants Us Re-Educated. Malik opens the staff portal. Front page, pinned by a moderator. I'm all for treating people with respect, but being told we need bias training because someone got their feelings hurt? Is this the new standard? What's next? Rating passengers based on how sensitive they are. Anonymous, crew member, 7+ years. Below it, 73 likes. 24 comments. Some in support, some not. But the tone is clear. They feel attacked. Malik closes the laptop, sits back, breathes slowly. It's always the same. The moment you ask for dignity to be standard, people act like you're stripping away their freedom. He walks down to the 14th floor, HR and training. The head of people and culture, Ron, waits in a polo with the SkyConnect logo and a stiff smile. Malik, he says, didn't expect to see you here today. Malik smiles gently. You rarely expect the owner until they show up unannounced. Ron clears his throat. So, about this situation. I don't see a situation, Malik replies. I see a culture I inherited. Ron exhales. With all due respect, the crew is shaken. They feel like they're being called racist. Are they? Ron shifts uncomfortably. We can't assume that. I'm not assuming anything, Malik says. But let's be real. If a black man in first class gets his ID checked twice and gets mocked behind the curtain, it's not a service issue. It's a system one. Ron lowers his voice. It's sensitive. We need to roll this out carefully. Not like a punishment. Malik nods. Good. So, let's make sure the punishment stays where it belongs, in the old culture. We're building something else now. That afternoon, he sends the internal memo. Subject, culture of care, starting now. Team, you didn't sign up to be part of a movement. You signed up to serve, fly, lead, and grow. But being on this team means something more now. It means seeing every passenger, treating every story like it matters, recognizing that dignity doesn't depend on clothing, accent, or class. We don't train people because they're broken. We train because we're building something better. See you in the sky. Malik. Response is mixed. Some crew send quiet thank you emails. One pilot writes, I've been waiting years for this culture shift. But others? Silence. Or worse, sarcasm. Brianna shows him a Slack screenshot from an anonymous group. Wonder if he'd still be this woke if he didn't own the company. Malik doesn't reply. He just highlights the line and saves it. That night, at 11:47 p.m., his phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. You're making enemies. Quiet ones. He stares at it. No name. No ID. Just a message. He thinks about replying. Then doesn't. Because it's not a threat. It's a reminder. The next day, Malik boards another SkyConnect flight. This time as a mystery shopper, unannounced. He's seated in economy. Row 18. The flight is packed. Baby crying. Someone's elbow in his ribs. He watches. The flight attendant skips his row for drinks. Doesn't make eye contact. Laughs with a white couple up front. He sees the same patterns playing on repeat. It's not about him. It's about how invisible people become the moment their appearance doesn't match someone's expectations. When he lands, he sits in a rideshare, looking out the window at the city flying by, and suddenly he doubts, not himself, but the system. What if this company isn't fixable? What if they don't want better, they just want quieter? Back in his apartment, he opens his notebook. He writes, "You can't retrain what people don't want to unlearn." He underlines it twice, and then another line, "But if I quit, what message does that send to the kid watching from row 32? He closes the book. He's not done yet. They'll let you stay, as long as you stay silent. It starts with a ping. 5:42 a.m. His phone buzzes. Brianna. All caps. Malik. Check Twitter. Now. He's not a fan of social media before coffee, but today, he doesn't need caffeine. Just the screen. He opens X, formerly Twitter, and sees it. A leaked video. 39 seconds. Caption, "So this is what the SkyConnect CEO thinks of his own employees." It's a cut, heavily edited from the conversation he had with Erica in the galley. Just 2 lines. "Malik, are you verifying my seat or your staff's assumptions about me? Malik, you'll train your team." No context. No mention of the mocking comments. No mention of the double ID check. No mention of the ownership. Just a dark-skinned man in a hoodie telling a white flight manager what to do. The internet runs wild. Power trip much? Another rich crybaby trying to cancel people for doing their jobs. If he hates the crew so much, maybe he should fly private. And under those tweets are worse ones. More cruel. More racial. Some subtle. Most not. Malik puts the phone down. His chest doesn't rise. Doesn't fall. He just sits. Still. 1 hour later, he's in the boardroom. SkyConnect execs. Corporate PR. Legal. HR. Everyone looks uncomfortable. Ron from HR speaks first. "We're issuing a neutral statement. No blame, no sides. Just commitment to listening and improving." Malik raises an eyebrow. "You mean appeasing the angry people online?" Ron hesitates. "We can't afford a boycott. Not during Q4. Another exec chimes in. "Sir, with all due respect, maybe it's better if you just clarify your intentions. Reassure people you're not here to shame the staff." Malik stares at him. "I'm not here to reassure people who are comfortable with discrimination." Silence. The PR woman speaks next. "We can draft something that sounds sincere. Soft tone. Not too militant." Brianna winces in her seat. Malik turns slowly toward her. "You've been quiet," he says. She exhales. "Hard. I think the internet is doing what the internet does. But this company is doing what it's always done, prioritizing feelings over facts. If you walk this back, you lose you." The room waits. He looks around. These are people who claim to follow his leadership as long as it's safe. As long as it doesn't challenge comfort. As long as it doesn't ask anything deeper than slogans. Diversity is a value, they say. But what they mean is diversity that doesn't talk back. Malik stands. "I'm not posting a statement," he says. "I'm not apologizing for asking for basic humanity." "But Malik," Ron says, "you're alienating your own people." He turns. "No, I'm exposing them." That night, he writes something else. Not for PR. Not for spin. For himself. And the people watching. He posts a single note on his verified page. Respect isn't optional. Dignity shouldn't be earned. And if asking for better makes people angry, it's because they were comfortable with worse. Malik Dawson. It goes viral in 12 minutes. But the backlash intensifies. News anchors debate his tone. Hashtags explode. Hashtag COing first class. Hashtag fly humble. Hashtag class war in the sky. Former employees dig up past photos of Malik with celebrities. Others accuse him of acting superior in meetings. A former flight attendant posts a thread claiming he once ignored her greeting in 2019. The world doesn't want nuance. It wants a villain. Or a puppet. Not someone who speaks with calm fire and makes you question what you've normalized. Days pass. Stock drops 2%. News headlines multiply. His phone doesn't stop. Investors call. Journalists reach out. Family texts. Are you okay? He says he is. But deep down, he's not sure. He walks into the hangar one evening. Alone. The aircrafts are silent, sleeping metal giants under warehouse lights. He stares up at one of them. The SkyConnect logo on the tail. His logo. He whispers under his breath. I built this to make people feel like they belong. And now he's being told to walk away from it. Brianna finds him the next morning. You missed the leadership breakfast, she says. I wasn't hungry. You missed the press call. I wasn't in the mood to lie. She looks at him carefully. You thinking of quitting? He doesn't answer. Instead, he pulls out his notebook. Read this, he says. It's a page full of names. Not executives. Not influencers. Crew members. Flight attendants. Ground staff. Mechanics. And beside each name, short notes. Helped an elderly woman with Parkinson's. Stood up for a black passenger quietly being mocked. Suggested crew-wide language training for more inclusive service. These are the people I'm doing this for, Malik says. Not the board. Not Twitter. Them. That night, he records a short video, shot in his home office. No suit. No background music. Just Malik, looking into the lens. Calm. Tired. Unshaken. I've been quiet most of my life. Because that's what keeps you safe. But silence doesn't change culture. So, I'm not going to be silent anymore. He pauses, breathes, looks away, then back. I didn't start this company to be liked. I started it so the next kid wearing a hoodie in first class wouldn't have to prove why they belong there. This isn't about a seat. It's about the stories we're told about who deserves comfort and who deserves scrutiny. If that makes people uncomfortable, good. It means we're finally telling the truth. He hits post, then walks out onto his balcony. Sky dark above him. Planes slicing across the distance like tiny sparks of defiance. He doesn't know what comes next, but he knows this. You can lose comfort. You can lose approval. But you cannot afford to lose yourself. The truth doesn't need a shout. It just needs the silence to break. It's been 6 days since Malik posted the video. 6 days of headlines, DMs, think pieces, satire, threats, and praise. The world can't seem to agree. Is he the villain, the voice, or just another rich guy with a savior complex? Malik doesn't argue. He doesn't explain. He just shows up. Monday, 10 a.m. Town Hall Day. SkyConnect's quarterly all-staff meeting, broadcast to 14 cities and over 6,000 employees. Normally, it's a celebration. Slides, numbers, team wins. But this time, everyone's watching for one thing. Will Malik Dawson speak? Or will he cave? The camera rolls. The stage lights flick on. A few executives give stiff intros. Then Malik walks on stage. Black blazer. Black t-shirt. No teleprompter. He doesn't stand behind the podium. He walks past it to the edge of the platform. He looks into the camera. Straight at the staff watching from break rooms, lounges, airport gates. And he says, if you've already made up your mind about me, this probably won't change it. But if you're here to listen, really listen, I'm going to tell you a story. And he does. He tells them about his mother, working doubles to afford groceries. He tells them about how she was once told to wait until her boarding group was called, even though she had early access due to her disability. He tells them how she said, flying isn't made for people like us, and how at 29 he promised himself he would change that. He tells them about starting Credsure with a cracked laptop, building it for people the banks ignored. He doesn't say all this to get applause. He says it because they need to know who he is, not the version online. Then he pauses, and he says, I didn't ask for anyone to be fired. I didn't go public to shame the crew. I asked for training, not punishment. For respect, not fear. For a system where someone like me doesn't get asked twice to prove they belong. The room is silent. Malik lets it breathe. Then, for the first time, someone claps. It's faint, from the back. Then 2 more. Then 5. And then the entire room, headquarters, satellite offices, even some lounges erupt in applause. And then the unexpected happens. The screen behind him shifts. An unscheduled video starts playing. It's a live feed. From LaGuardia Airport. Flight, Gate 34. There stands a woman, early 60s, curly salt and pepper hair. Green blouse. Clara Dawson. His mother. "Hi, baby," she says, smiling into the camera. "I wasn't going to do this, but they said I could talk to you live, so I hope this is okay." The entire room melts. She continues. "I saw the comments. The noise. I know what the world tries to do when a black man speaks up without getting angry. They don't know the version of you who used to tape quarters together to buy me flowers on my birthday, or who taught yourself code so I wouldn't have to ask nobody for rent money. I just want to say, I'm proud of you, not because you own planes, because you never stopped protecting people who can't speak loud enough to be heard." Malik doesn't move. He just breathes slow, deep. The room is teary. Some cover their faces. Others nod, whisper, "Wow," under their breath. And then comes the second twist. A woman walks on stage beside him. Mid-40s, airline uniform, wings pinned above her heart. Sandra Ruiz, flight supervisor, 19 years of service. She walks up to the mic. "I was on that flight," she says. Dead silence. "I saw the looks, heard the whispers, and I want to say, publicly, you weren't wrong. You were right to speak up, and I should have said something then." She turns to him. "I'm sorry." Malik nods. No ego, just humanity. She continues. "I've been quiet a long time. I've heard comments like that for years. I've made excuses for them, but not anymore. Not since you showed me that silence is just permission in disguise." The applause this time is louder. Not just for Malik. For her. For all the people in the room who wanted to say something and never knew how. After the town hall, Brianna meets him backstage. She's not smiling, she's crying. "Your mom wrecked me," she says. Malik chuckles softly. "She wrecks everyone." And then he gets a message on Slack from someone he's never met. To Malik Dawson. "Thank you. I've been flying this route for 12 years. You're the first person who made me feel like the story behind my name actually mattered." And across the company, things begin to shift. The anonymous posts start to disappear. One of the most vocal critics resigns, quietly. And Erica Tran, she requests to lead the new bias training initiative, voluntarily. Malik doesn't celebrate. He just nods. Change doesn't come when the powerful rise. It comes when the quiet stop hiding. That night, Malik gets on another flight. He sits in economy. No one questions his seat. The attendant smiles and says, "Welcome back, Mr. Dawson." Not because she's scared, but because she knows now. He leans his head back, closes his eyes, and for the first time in weeks, he breathes like a man who didn't lose. He breathes like a man who chose truth and finally saw the world shift around it. The world claps for your courage until that courage starts to cost them comfort. The next week is quieter. On the surface, the town hall goes viral. News outlets call it a masterclass in leadership. The public starts to shift, some headlines read. From scandal to standard. Malik Dawson rewrites the rules of corporate culture. The airline's PR team is ecstatic. But Malik? He knows better. Because behind the praise comes the pushback. Monday, HR meeting. Ron looks strained, less friendly. Some employees are pushing back against the new training initiative. He says they feel like they're being accused of something. "They're not," Malik replies. "They're being invited to see something." Ron nods. Still, the union's reviewing it. And there's chatter. What kind? Some crew members are threatening to file complaints about being pressured into sensitivity sessions. Malik folds his arms. Calm, measured. Funny how people never feel pressured when the system favors them. Ron doesn't respond. 2 days later, he notices it again. His calendar starts to shift. Meetings get canceled at the last minute. Certain department heads no longer CC him in memos. A major procurement deal goes through without his sign-off. Brianna catches it first. "They're freezing you out," she says. "Not fully. No, just enough to remind you you're still black. Still new money." Still lucky to be here. Malik exhales slowly. He doesn't raise hell. He documents everything. Thursday. Staff cafe. Malik walks into the shared lounge area. Usually there are a few nods, light conversation. Today, a full table of executives goes silent when he enters. They glance, then look away. One of them, Derek, head of operations, grabs his tray and moves tables. Malik says nothing. He simply grabs a cup of coffee, sits at a table by the window, and opens his notebook. Page title, When the Culture Pretends to Clap, but Plots While Smiling. And then it escalates. A leak. An anonymous blog post titled, The Truth About Malik Dawson, the CEO Who Divides. It's long, dramatic, accusatory. Claims that Malik is running a personal vendetta, suspiciously combative, and creating a climate of racial favoritism. Some quotes sound rehearsed, scripted. The language is familiar. Malik scrolls, and near the end, he sees it. A quote from Ron. Not official, but telling. We're not all on board with his methods. Brianna bursts into his office that afternoon. You see it. He nods. Want me to call legal? No. Let them play their cards. You're just going to take it? Malik closes the laptop. No. I'm going to outlast it. That night in his apartment, he stands by the window. The city lights flicker below. He thinks of the boy he used to be, coding in the kitchen at 1 a.m., barely able to afford rent, telling himself, one day they'll have to see you. And now, they see him. But some wish they didn't. Not because he failed, but because he didn't fail the way they expected. The next morning, he walks into the office earlier than usual. In the lobby, a janitor is mopping. She's Latina, middle-aged, tired but focused. He nods at her. Morning. She smiles. Buenos dias. He notices something. The mop water is nearly black. Her gloves are torn. He steps into HR. No warning. Straight to Ron. Why is our janitorial staff using broken gloves? Ron blinks. That's handled by our contractor. And who hired the contractor? We did. But Malik holds up a hand. Fix it. Today. He walks out. No more backroom cruelty. No more pretending the small things don't matter. If this system resists, it'll do so in broad daylight, not behind closed doors. Days later, a memo circulates. Subject: Company-wide Workplace Standards Upgrade Initiative, ordered by CEO. Some cheer. Others grumble. But no one can deny. He's not letting up. A week later, Malik receives a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a single page. Asterisk, I'm one of the people who talk behind your back. I was raised to believe men, like you, were only allowed to be talented, not in charge. I was wrong. I see it now. Don't stop. Former skeptic asterisk. He reads it 3 times, then places it inside his notebook, taped to the back cover. You don't fix culture by going viral. You fix it by surviving the retaliation. The loudest applause isn't always in a room. Sometimes it's in a sentence. It's a Thursday night. The board has gone quiet. The news cycle is on to the next scandal. Skyconnect stock has stabilized. The staff backlash is thinning. The noise is fading. But Malik? He's still carrying the weight. Because success doesn't always come with closure. And silence, even now, still echoes louder than praise. He's invited to a dinner. A semi-private gathering hosted by a nonprofit that supports young entrepreneurs of color. He almost says no. But Brianna gives him the look. There's someone who really wants to meet you, she says. Don't make me pull the you owe me card. He rolls his eyes. Fine. 1 hour. No speeches. She grins. Famous last words. The event is small, warm. Candlelight, laughter, hugs that mean something. The kind of room where ambition meets purpose. Malik stands by the back wall, sipping club soda, scanning the crowd. He spots a familiar face, Sandra Ruiz, the flight supervisor who spoke up during the town hall. She sees him, walks over. Still flying economy, she teases. He smirks. Always. They laugh. Then she says, you were right, about it all. He nods, humbly. Takes 2 to change anything. She pauses. Then adds, Actually, sometimes it just takes one to be brave first. And then he hears a voice behind him. Excuse me, Mr. Dawson? He turns. A teenage boy stands there, maybe 17, slim, nervous, dressed in his best attempt at formal. His name tag reads Avery H., Youth Fellow. Malik smiles. That's me. The boy gulps, then holds out a trembling hand. You changed my life, he says. Malik takes the handshake steady, warm. Avery continues. I was on your flight, the one where all that stuff happened. I was in seat 28D. Malik's eyebrows lift. Really? Avery nods. I saw the way they looked at you. I saw how you didn't flinch. And I thought, maybe I don't have to either. Malik doesn't speak. He just listens. Avery's voice cracks. My dad, he always says I have to shrink to stay safe. But watching you, I realized I don't want to shrink anymore. The room disappears for a second. The music, the lights, the wine glasses. All Malik sees is a boy who looked at him once and saw a version of himself that wasn't afraid. He clears his throat. Thank you for telling me, he says, voice soft. Avery smiles. Can I show you something? He pulls out his phone, opens an app. One Malik instantly recognizes, CredSure. I'm using your platform to build credit early. For my first car. I didn't even know I could do that. Malik grins. That's exactly why I built it. Later, outside, Malik steps into the night air. Cool breeze. Distant traffic. A soft quiet. He leans against the railing, watching the city glow. And then footsteps. Brianna appears beside him, holding 2 cups of coffee. I figured you wouldn't drink the wine, she says. He takes the cup. Thanks for making me come. She smiles. You needed that. He nods. Yeah, I did. Then she asks, did you hear what Avery said? I did. Did you let it sink in? Malik turns to her. I think for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. She looks at him with pride, but also something deeper. Not admiration, not respect, recognition. You don't, she says. You never did. And then she says the words that haven't been said to him. Not by the board, not by investors, not by social media, just 3 words. You were right. They land softly, but in Malik's chest, they thunder. He doesn't cry. He doesn't exhale. He just lets it hit him. And finally, he believes it. Not because he needed validation, but because the truth finally had a voice that wasn't just his. Later that night, he opens his notebook, a blank page. He writes one line. When the right words come, the war inside you ends. True legacy isn't what you build for yourself. It's what you leave in the hands of others without needing credit. It's a Tuesday morning. Malik sits at a community center in Southeast D.C. No cameras, no headlines, just folding chairs, white walls, and a circle of teenagers nervously holding notepads. It's part of a pilot program he launched quietly 3 weeks ago. Seat 2, a first-class thinking for real-world kids. They don't know much about him, just that he built something big. They don't know he owns planes. They don't care. They just know he's here. And he listens. Today's question, what's one thing you were told you'd never do and still dream about doing? Hands rise, slowly, then faster. One girl says she wants to be a pilot. Another wants to be a lawyer, the kind that doesn't roll her eyes when she sees where you're from. A boy near the back says, they told me people like me don't lead. Malik looks him in the eye and says, I was told that too. Turns out they were wrong. After the session, Malik stays behind to help clean up. A boy lingers in the doorway, hoodie hesitant posture. Same boy who sat in the back last week. Didn't speak. Didn't even look up. Today he does. I Googled you, he says quietly. Malik smiles. And you used to live off Georgia Avenue? I did. The boy nods slowly. My uncle was in the same shelter you used to volunteer at. Malik blinks. What's your uncle's name? Marcus. Malik smiles. Marcus with the chessboard? The boy lights up. Yeah, that's him. Malik laughs. He used to beat me in 12 moves. The boy steps closer. He said, You always brought extra food, even when you didn't have much yourself. Malik shrugs. I had enough to share. The boy pauses, then says, he told me not to let the world decide who I am, and now I know where he got that from. Malik doesn't respond. He just puts a hand on the boy's shoulder. Not to say, I'm proud of you, but to say, you've already got what you need. Just keep going. Later that week, Malik visits Skyconnect's maintenance hangar. Unannounced. Again, he walks past rows of mechanics, engineers, janitorial staff. No cameras, no speech, just two hands in his pockets and a quiet smile. He stops at a workbench where a woman is soldering a connector. You built that, he asks. She nods. Not glamorous, but it keeps your tray table from collapsing midair. He grins. Then you're the real hero. She glances up. You're him, aren't you? I'm me, he replies. She chuckles. I didn't vote for you when they were trying to push you out. He nods. Most didn't. But I was wrong, she adds. You stuck around when others would have cashed out. He just smiles. And then a poetic twist. Brianna calls. Someone wants to meet with you. Big deal. You like this? He raises an eyebrow. Investor? Nope. Regulator. Malik sighs. I hate those meetings. Not this one, she says. Trust me. 2 days later, he walks into a modest office in Arlington. It's not what he expects. And then she walks in. A black woman. Mid-50s, braids pulled into a bun. Glasses with rose-colored frames. Gwen Thomas, Deputy Chair of the Federal Aviation Consumer Protection Task Force. Mr. Dawson, she says, offering her hand. I've been waiting a long time to shake yours. He takes it curious. Why? She smiles. Because I've been watching. You didn't just challenge a culture. You shifted the altitude of the entire conversation. And now we want your input. On policy. On training. On passenger experience. Not as a token voice. As a strategic architect. Malik is stunned. Why me, he finally asks. She looks him in the eye. Because you didn't burn the building. You renovated it. And now we want help building more like it. That night, back in his apartment, Malik watches the city move. Cars crawl. Lights blink. Planes drift like thoughts in the dark. He opens his notebook, turns to the last page. He writes, Legacy isn't what they say about you. It's what someone else becomes because of you. He closes the book, smiles, and for the first time, maybe ever, he feels full. You know it mattered. When people start choosing better, even when you're not watching. 1 month later, Skyconnect's customer satisfaction score hits an all-time high. Not because the food got better, not because they added legroom, because something feels different on board. The crew smiles more. They greet people like names, not numbers. They listen, even when it's inconvenient. And passengers notice, especially the ones who are used to being ignored. Malik isn't on every flight. He's not in every meeting. He's not micromanaging. He's watching the ripple. And it's growing. In Oakland, a gate agent holds the door open for a woman struggling with a stroller. Don't worry, she says. We don't close doors on moms. Not here. In Atlanta, a black teen in a hoodie walks into the first-class cabin. No one double-checks his ticket. The flight attendant just says, Welcome aboard, sir. In Chicago, a flight supervisor removes a crew member from rotation after overhearing a snide comment about a passenger's accent. No warning, just action. The culture isn't perfect, but it's moving, and people can feel it. Malik sits in the back of a community conference in Detroit. He's not speaking today, just listening. A panel of young founders are talking about resilience, leadership, and staying rooted. One of them says, I used to think silence was strength. But then I watched that video of Malik Dawson saying, if asking for dignity makes you angry, it's because you were comfortable with disrespect. That line changed how I lead my team. Now, we don't avoid hard conversations. We lean into them. Malik exhales. That sentence, written in the dark, alone, under stress, has become someone else's compass. He's walking to the parking lot when a woman approaches him. Older, professional, Soft eyes. You don't know me, she says, but I was the mother of the boy in 28D. Malik pauses, slowly smiles. His name's Avery, right? She nods. He's writing essays now, she says, about leadership, about identity. He used to be so quiet. Now, he tells me, when you see someone else take up space, it gives you permission to take up your own. She puts her hand over her heart. Thank you for giving my son permission. Later that week, a request comes in. The Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. They want to include Malik's story and the Flight 176 incident in a new exhibit titled, Seat at the Table, Stories of Dignity, Defiance, and Change. They ask if they can display his original notebook or at least one page. Malik thinks, then chooses the very first page he wrote after that flight. What happens when dignity isn't optional but automatic? He signs the release. Not for ego, for legacy. In the press, the conversation begins to shift. Instead of headlines like, is Malik Dawson too radical? Now it's, what if every company had a Malik Dawson? Respect is profitable. How culture became Skyconnect's edge. He doesn't chase interviews, but when he speaks, people listen differently because now they've seen it work. Then a decision. It comes one morning over coffee and silence. He's alone. No advisors. No press. Just a moment of clarity. He opens his laptop, types a brief internal memo. Subject, transition. Team. I've always said leadership isn't about holding the mic, it's about making sure more voices get heard. I've spent the last few years building, protecting, shifting. And now it's time to pass the baton. I will be stepping down as CEO at the end of this quarter, not out of defeat, but out of trust. Trust in what we've built. Trust in what you'll keep building. C2A is no longer just a story. It's a standard. Stay grounded. Keep rising. Malik. The email goes out at 6:18 a.m. By 6:37, it's everywhere. People are stunned. Some sad. Some angry. But the most common response? He really did it his way. That night, Malik stands on the rooftop of his building. The sky is clear. Planes blink across the dark, silent sky. He smiles, because the question now isn't, what do I do next? It's, who else will take their seat? Not all landings come with applause. Some arrive with a whisper and a knowing smile. It's his last official flight. Not as a CEO, not as a mystery shopper. Just as a man taking a trip, Malik boards the plane quietly as always. Hoodie, book in hand. Same seat, 2A. This time, no one double-checks his boarding pass. No extra glance. No rehearsed apology. Just a simple, welcome aboard, Mr. Dawson. The attendant smiles genuinely. She means it. Malik nods. Thanks. He sits, buckles in, exhales. The cabin fills slowly. People settle in. Bags slide overhead. Children fidget. And then a little boy appears beside him. Maybe 6 years old. Curly hair. Wide eyes. A comic book clutched in his hand. His mom helps him into the seat. 2B. She looks flustered. A single mom. Rushed. Breathless. I'm so sorry, she says to Malik. It's his first time flying. We barely made it. Malik smiles warmly. No problem. The boy turns toward him. Stares. Are you a pilot? He whispers. Malik chuckles. No, just a passenger today. The boy frowns. But you look important. Malik shrugs playfully. Maybe just a little tired. The boy giggles. I'm going to be a pilot one day. For real. I'm going to fly planes and draw superheroes. Malik smiles, something soft and warm stirring in his chest. You can do both, he says. Even if I look like me, the boy asks. Malik turns to him and says, not with inspiration, not with performance, just with truth, especially because you look like you. The mother watches. Quietly. She doesn't interrupt. She just squeezes her son's hand. The plane takes off. Clouds part. The sky opens wide. Malik looks out the window, not at the view, but at everything it took to get here. All the closed doors. All the coded language. All the double checks. Are you sure this is your seat? All the moments he wanted to disappear, and all the reasons he didn't. He reaches into his backpack, pulls out his old notebook. The leather is worn now, corners frayed, ink faded, but the words? Still clear, still true. He flips to the last page, the page he left blank. Until now, he writes, I am no longer proving. I am planting. He puts the pen down, looks out at the endless sky. Somewhere over Tennessee, the boy next to him falls asleep, head tilted against Malik's arm. Malik doesn't move. He just stays still like a mountain, solid, warm, present. The boy mumbles something in his sleep, and Malik hears it. C2A. Like a spell, a name, a dream he's stepping into. Malik closes his eyes, smiles. The plane begins its descent. Malik feels it. That slow drop, the gentle return to earth. But this time he doesn't brace. He welcomes it. Because for the first time in a long time, he knows he's not the story anymore. He's the foundation someone else will build from. The wheels touch down. The seatbelt sign dings. The boy wakes, rubbing his eyes, smiling up at Malik. Did we fly good? Malik grins. We did better than that. We rose. As they deboard, the flight attendant hands Malik something. A folded note. No name. Just a line written in careful cursive. You made space, and now we fill it. Malik tucks it into the back of his notebook and steps off the plane. No press, no announcement, no farewell speech, just footsteps on the jet bridge, and one quiet truth echoing with every step. The sky remembers who rose through it. Sparkle's final line, and somewhere in row 32, a new story begins. Because C2A finally made room. Airplane